What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Takeaways edition of the Vegas Nation podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Fang, joined today with one of my whole favorite people, a whole person on the planet. That's Myles Simmons, joining me from Pro Football Talk, the PFT Talk, and Peter King podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you on today, Myles. Thank you for coming on to join me.
I am always happy to join you, Heidi. You know that. It's like coming home again.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to have you here, one of the originals of the Vegas Nation podcast. And before we get into everything here today, Myles, I got to thank the sponsors. We're brought to you by Station Casinos, STN Sports. Download the mobile app today. We're also presented to you on Blue Wire Podcasts. And again, Myles Simmons joined me. The reason I wanted to have you on is because you are a national voice now. You know what's going on with everything from the combine to perceptions of things and free agency. So one of the things that I wanted to start off with is Lamar Jackson. I wondered why people aren't really, I know they can't talk about it until March 15th, the open free agency date, but Lamar Jackson, I would think, would be so sought after that you wouldn't see an immediate knee-jerk reaction from so many teams saying, especially quarterback hungry teams saying, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. Now, what do you think that is? Is it the perception of the Deshaun Watson money that presumably he wants?
I think it's a lot of things, Heidi, and I don't know that it's any just one thing, but I do think it's weird when you have somebody and the non-exclusive franchise tag is placed on him, and that's Lamar Jackson, right? And so that means that he can now go out and negotiate a new deal with other teams, that the Ravens would have the right to either match that deal, or if they don't want to match that deal, then they would be able to accept 2 first-round picks in exchange for Lamar Jackson. I mean, I would think that there wouldn't necessarily be people, trying to break down his door in order to sign him. But I did find it just odd that you had team after team after team leaking to the media yesterday, as we record this on Wednesday, yesterday was Tuesday, that after, Lamar Jackson, they know he's going to be out there on the market. They just basically said, no, we're not interested. The Panthers, the Falcons, I mean, the Dolphins, it makes sense because the Dolphins technically are not eligible to even sign him to an offer sheet until after the 2023 draft because they don't have a first round pick. Okay. I mean, you also have, but all these teams that are saying, no, we're not interested, especially after last year, you saw so many teams kind of fall over themselves in pursuit of Deshaun Watson. I don't understand it. You don't have the concerns that you had with Deshaun Watson, where he was facing a suspension for the allegations of sexual misconduct and assault. Right? This is somebody that, yes, he's had a couple injury issues, but Lamar Jackson's a model citizen by all accounts. Right? He is a past MVP award winner. And so I don't know. I'm a little baffled by it, and it's something that we got to continue to dig into over the next few days and week, whatever it happens to be, before free agency actually opens, because it's a very bizarre thing to me.
And like you mentioned, the injury, I realized that over the past 2 seasons, he's been able to play 12 games apiece. So obviously a 17-week seasons, that's difficult to kind of accept from a GM standpoint or owner standpoint, and wondering where is he at in terms of injury. But he's also on the younger side of things. He's 25, 26 years old, right? So going into that and thinking, if I could lock him up for 5 years and have a Lamar Jackson until he's 31, that's like the prime years of his career, and still a position where you can try to build him and mold him into your offensive scheme. So like you said, for me, it was a little bit like, why are they just saying no so quickly? And I know the Raiders were on that list, which is why I wanted to start off with that, because you would think the Raiders could do that, but there's this question about escrow money. If he wants that much guaranteed, like, how does that work?
So the vast majority of the whatever guaranteed money that you get in a contract, right? So this is like funny money number that I'm just making this up out of thin air, to be clear. I'm not reporting anything. So say if you were going to give somebody a contract and they had $150 million guaranteed in that contract, $150 million has to go into escrow, cash, right? So that money is set aside so that you can't do anything else with it because it is guaranteed money. Now, when it comes to the Raiders, there is some thought and this probably is true, that Mark Davis is not as cash flow rich as some of the other owners, right? I mean, if you have, Stan Kroenke, for instance, right,
Okay.
or the Waltons that now, or Walton Penner Group that now owns the Denver Broncos. These are some of the most cash rich owners in all of sports, let alone just football. David Tepper is another one with the Carolina Panthers. So they can put 150, $200 million in escrow. And so I saw Tashawn Reed of The Athletic. He tweeted something basically like this, that last year, you had the Raiders commit 150-ish million total to players, right, in guaranteed money. Now, and if you're going to go after Lamar Jackson, you're probably upwards of 200 million guaranteed on one contract. And that's really what the difference is, right? So if this happens to be, Raiders interested, not interested, what have you, there is reason for them to have interest in Lamar Jackson, but knowing or thinking rather, at least, because we don't really know exactly what Lamar Jackson wants, because Lamar Jackson hasn't come out and said it.
Thank you.
And also he doesn't have an agent. So it's hard to deal with it from that perspective, because the agent is not putting out, narratives, if you will, or the desires of the contract that would be for his client. So there's all of this. I mean, it would behoove the Raiders, I think, to at least be interested. And what I don't really understand is why teams are saying they're not interested before they even have a phone call with Lamar Jackson.
And that's what I was going to get at. Go.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I saw an argument too on Twitter that was like, oh, you mean that teams aren't lining up for Lamar Jackson when they already have a quarterback, and they would have to soft pedal that guy if things don't work out with them, if the Ravens match the contract that Lamar Jackson gets. But we're not really talking about teams that currently have quarterbacks, right? What quarterback do the Panthers have? What Desmond Ridder, I understand, is the Falcons' incumbent quarterback, but really, like, we're not going to go after an MVP because of Desmond Ridder's hurt feelings. Same with the Washington Commanders. We're not going to go after a quarterback who's been an MVP because of Sam Howell's hurt feelings. If you're talking about the Raiders, what quarterback is under contract? I don't even know offhand. So
Chase Garbers.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to worry about Chase Garber's hurt feelings? I don't think so. So yeah, I think it's a weird situation. It's a unique situation given that Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent. And most of the time when guys are as talented as Lamar Jackson and they've accomplished as much as Lamar Jackson has, they don't get to year 4, year 5 without a new deal. I mean, think about what Kyler Murray's agent was putting out there last year, Eric Burkhart, with all those little, the barely readable statements that kept popping up on Twitter. It's the same thing I think about now, where Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Jalen Hurts probably aren't going to play a snap of 2023 football without a new contract because they have agents. So and I don't want to kill Lamar Jackson for not having an agent. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but it's one of those situations where this is why we're here. But I still don't really understand the reaction of teams, which is a long answer to a short question, Heidi. I'm sorry.
No, this is great because you're touching on things that I had kind of listed as follow-ups. But part of it is that, like you said, we haven't heard from Lamar Jackson. We don't know if it's really the guaranteed money that is his concern. That's what's put out there. But has Lamar Jackson ever said, I'm not playing if I don't get $230 million guaranteed over 5 years? I don't think so. I can't remember it, at least.
Well, the closest we've come is the 3 ESPN personalities, analysts, reporters, whatever you want to call them, have essentially reported that Lamar Jackson was offered $133 million guaranteed at signing.
Okay.
And the latest of which was Stephen A. Smith. He said this on First Take a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was. Now, that Lamar Jackson was offered $133 million guaranteed at signing. And he said, Stephen A. said that, Lamar Jackson's camp had called him and told him that. And so he's just passing along that information. Frankly, he's the third person at ESPN, like I said, in order to put that information out there.
Well, 133 guaranteed isn't horrific.
Guaranteed at signing is really the key phrasing here, because there's guaranteed at signing and then there's what the practical guarantees are. Because if you have guaranteed money that then kicks in, let's say 2 or 3 days after the new league year and the second year of that contract, right? Then that's a practical guarantee. And that could push the guarantees up to 160, 170 million perhaps, right? We don't know because we've never seen the full contract proposal that was offered by the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay.
The Ravens have been extremely respectful to, at least publicly, in what they have shared and what they have not shared about this negotiation with Lamar Jackson. So like I said, guaranteed at signing is one thing, but practical guarantees are another, because the Ravens were never going to cut Lamar Jackson after 1 year. That's just was not going to happen. So when you throw in the practical guarantees, now I understand, guaranteed at signing is different. And I do, especially after what happened with Deshaun Watson, where he's got a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed contract. Yes. If that's what you're looking at and you're trying to compare yourself, 170 million guaranteed even after one season, and it'll match that. I get that. But again, when you're looking at, when you're comparing what is not an outlier contract, which at this point the Deshaun Watson deal is, especially because Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson came after that, what Lamar Jackson might have been offered might have been more in line with that. And who knows what would have happened if he had an agent saying, hey man, this is a really good deal, or not, And so again, that's why we're in this situation, because there's just a lot of different stuff that goes into it.
And I hope he does get an agent, just because I would like to see somebody like him, who I believe to be, if not top 5 quarterback in the NFL, at least, top 10, get something that works out for his career, because you only have such a short window in the NFL to be able to, like we said, hit that prime at that peak. Totally. Meanwhile, you see guys like Daniel Jones get the 160 million, Derek Carr getting the contract that he has with the Saints. So these guys are able to negotiate decent interest, decent pay. And now I think, what does that do for Jimmy Garoppolo, who it seems the Raiders may still have interest in?
Well, they should still have interest in Jimmy Garoppolo for sure. I mean, he is going to be one of the better options there on the market, at least as a bridge quarterback, right? And he is familiar with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels is familiar with him. They can come in, they can do the things that they need to do. And what it would do, and I think the Raiders should still go after a quarterback. In this draft, they're picking pretty high. They have the ammo to go up and, trade some of those assets to get a higher pick if they feel like they need to. But Jimmy Garoppolo kind of allows you to play him and let that other guy sit, marinate a little bit, learn the NFL, learn more of the offense, and learn all the complexities and all these different things that come with it. And you have a guy that can at least go out there and win you some football games. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's mid, he's mid-tier, whatever you want to call it, but he can still win you games, if he's in the right situation. And I think that would be a good option for the Las Vegas Raiders for sure. Because Aaron Rodgers, it seems like, at least at this point, and who knows what will happen by the time this thing is released, it seems like Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are kind of circling the wagons around each other, and they're like looking at each other from across the bar, as I mix my metaphors, and eventually they're going to come together and they're going to make out and they're going to make a trade, and that Rodgers is going to be the Jets quarterback. So that seems like it's one thing. If I'm the Raiders, I'm letting that ship sail, and I would rather concentrate on somebody like a Jimmy Garoppolo, who I can get to come in and maybe can play, or just go back to Jarrett Stidham, because frankly, he showed me enough in those last couple of games where you think, all right, he can at least be a bridge quarterback. Maybe he didn't play longer than half the season, but if you get the right quarterback in your system as a rookie, then that could be okay too, and you can pass the baton on.
So, Myles, you were at the Combine the whole week, able to get a look. You can actually look and watch the drills this year. That's new. That's different. First of all, how exciting was that to be a part of that experience?
So what's funny, Heidi, I mean, before I worked for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I worked for the Rams for 5 years, for you that don't know that. And the great thing about going to the Combine as team personnel when you're in media is that you can go into the stadium. And so I used to sneak into the bowl and watch the drills all the time. So I remember in, 2018, Josh Allen is coming out. He's just, yeeting footballs all the way down the field, and his arm's very impressive. Byron Jones, I remember his really super long jump. Myles Garrett had a really impressive Combine performance too. So I've been able to see some of those things before. And to me, it's never made sense that the media has not been allowed to be in there, especially when fans started to be allowed in there. So it was nice that, now they have this big stadium and there's a section cornered off for media, because I've never understood why that wasn't the case before.
Because you might sneak your camera in there and then give up what they're going to put on the broadcast. It's all about
I guess
TV
so. Yeah,
rights.
of course.
That's what I
Right. Yeah.
figure. So being a part of this and getting to watch, for me, what my big takeaways always are from the combine are being able to speak to the individuals that are being presented on the podiums or at the tables, what have you, and getting to kind of get an idea of where their perception is, where their mind is, what kind of head they have on their shoulders. So you talked about Jared Stidham as a possible bridge quarterback. If you were to keep Jared Stidham on the Raiders, what would you do with that 7 pick? Would you kind of trade it, get more picks later on, and maybe go after a guy like Hendon Hooker? Or would you try to trade up and try to look at a potential CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson?
Well, I think Hendon Hooker is such an interesting guy for a number of reasons. I mean, I thought he presented very well at the podium, and that's not everything, but it's also not nothing when you also have a Jarrett Stidham Stetson Bennett,
Yeah.
who is like a couple podiums away. And my coworker, Shireen Williams, who's been covering the NFL for the last 28 years, said that in her time at a combine, she's never seen a player come off worse than Stetson Bennett at the podium.
Oh.
So that tells me a lot about him. And I mean, that guy's got some character issues anyway. But, I think when you're talking about a Hendon Hooker, yeah, you might be able to get him in the second round. But are you really going to have the upside of an Anthony Richardson if he's there in the first round? I mean, if the Raiders don't trade up and Anthony Richardson is there at 7, I would take him. Because of the upside. I mean, you don't know what the floor is exactly because there's just not necessarily that much tape. And some of the things that he did in college were inconsistent, but good coaches a lot of times will say, if I see that a guy can do something once, then I'm going to try to believe that I can coach him up to do that thing all the time. And when you see the highlights of Anthony Richardson, they're absolutely electric. I mean, how fast he runs, ran a 4.44 40, which is ridiculous speed for a quarterback. I mean, he's got a couple of 80-yard runs for touchdowns. I saw a play where he's rolling around in the backfield to his right and then fires a really accurate pass into the end zone that, reminded me of something Patrick Mahomes has done that I have seen, Josh Allen has done, right? So those are the kinds of traits where you're like, man, you're sitting there at 7. You might not be able to get all the way up to number 1. You might not be able to, scoop past the Colts where they are either. But if Anthony Richardson is there, or if some CJ Stroud is there, Will Levis, I'm a little iffy on, just because of the inconsistency. We talk about that. He had that in college, and some of it showed up, I thought, in the combine workouts. But like I said, if you can get Richardson, I would do it. I would just do it.
What were the consistencies with Will Levis? Because that's been a curious name for me, being that we had 1 year, 2021, where he was great on film, and then 2022, not as great. So
yeah.
What do you think the main and consistent issue is with him that a team would need to really focus on to get him to be the true pure starter that has a lot of consistent goodness about him?
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of it is talent that was around him. Some of it that was coaching that was also around him. Liam Cohen was their offensive coordinator, play caller in 2021, went back to the Los Angeles Rams to be the offensive coordinator there in 2022. And now he's going to be back at Kentucky in 2023. So I think anytime you're shifting play callers like that, that also doesn't necessarily help you. His line up front was not necessarily as good, but also, when you look at what he does in the red zone, some of the decision making has just not been as good as you would like it to be. Some of how he holds on to the football, and some of how he's not necessarily throwing as many touchdowns as you would like on plays. So that's kind of the thing that's a little bit of the concern that I got with Will Levis, especially talking to people around the combine with him. So that's, I think, you look at him though. And you see a quarterback, right? He looks the part. He sounds the part when he is talking to the media. He understands, he says at the podium, I got a cannon for an arm. I want to show it off. That's why I'm working out. So there are things where you can say, all right, I see Will Levis can progress into something, right? Josh Allen, he had accuracy issues when he was coming out of Wyoming. And it took a couple years, but those things kind of got worked out. That's the kind of thing where if you look at Will Levis, you might not necessarily get the best of him from day one, but if he can come in, he's got the right coaches around him, he's got the right talent around him, then maybe he can excel, years 2, 3, and 4.
All right. So as we continue just to break this down, I have a couple more questions for you here. Anthony Richardson just showed out, like you said.
Yeah.
Probability that he's there at 7, where do you put it at?
And I don't know, because it's tough. It depends on how much a team wants him versus a Will Levis. I think we all kind of figure that Bryce Young and CJ Stroud will be the first 2 quarterbacks off the board, right? Yeah. So, and those 2 guys may go 1, 2. Hell, they may go 1, 2, 3 at quarterback, depending on the way things stack up, right? I mean, if the Bears go out of number 1 to the Texans, and they trade that pick, they swap 1 and 2, which I can absolutely see happening, then you're probably going to get Bryce Young at 1. Now, what happens at 2? The Colts may jump up, maybe the Raiders jump up, maybe the Panthers jump up. Any one of those teams could do that. And then you've got quarterbacks probably at 1, 2, right? Well, then what happens at 3? I mean, you could still go 1, 2, 3. So there's a lot that could happen. This is a really bad answer, Heidi, but I'm just going to do it. I mean, I'd say it's 50-50 whether he's going to be there at 7. Either he will or he won't.
All right, which leads me to my next question of how much capital, if he's really your guy or CJ Stroud is really your guy, like you just kind of broke that down. We know Bryce Young is probably out of the question unless you move to 1. So, or 2. But if the Bears don't deal that 1 is where I was getting at with that. But if you actually have to package up your picks, because I know what the 49ers did to be able to get Trey Lance. It was 4 picks and they still have 1 yet to go. But one of those players that they ended up trading away turned out to be Micah Parsons to the Cowboys, you know? So if you think about the capital that you have to give up to be able to move up to get your franchise guy, is it worth it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, as long as you are convinced that that guy really is your franchise guy, and where people think that the 49ers might have messed up is, well, they just got Brock Purdy and look at what Brock Purdy did, but I always feel like, and maybe Trey Lance doesn't need me to defend him. He probably doesn't, but I just feel like when you're talking about a quarterback and how premium of a position it is, and we don't really know much about Trey Lance as a pro. We really don't. He played, I think, 2 games as a starter as a rookie. And then last year, he played in a monsoon in Chicago in week 1, and then he broke his ankle in week 2. We don't know. I mean, Trey Lance could have been fantastic by the time we got to week 18 in this last season, but we'll never know that. And the problem, too, is that he didn't play that much college football. He had such a long layoff with college football because of the pandemic, too, and the level he was playing at North Dakota State. So I still think that Trey Lance can be that guy for San Francisco. He's going to have every opportunity to do it now, especially because Brock Purdy is probably not going to be ready until September to play, given the fact that his elbow surgery isn't scheduled until this Friday of this week as we're recording this, Heidi. So I say all that to say, if you can get your franchise quarterback, you can get the guy that you believe can lead you to that promised land, and you can grow with them. And listening to Josh McDaniels at the combine, it really sounds like that's what he would like to do. Then I think that that's what you should do. You should do whatever it takes. If it takes 3 first-round picks, fine. If it takes 2 first-rounders and a second-rounder and a third-rounder and a second-rounder from next year, fine. But if you don't have that guy, it is extremely hard to win in the NFL. Look at the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl. They know that they've got their guys. And why did the Chiefs win? Well, because their guy was just that much better than Jalen Hurts. So, I mean, Mahomes is incredible and all that, and Burrow's incredible, and you've got Josh Allen also in the conference who's great. Justin Herbert is in the division, and he's great. So you need that guy, especially in the AFC West. And if McDaniels and Ziegler are convinced that one of them is in this class is the guy, then they should go up and do what they need to do and get him.
Thanks, everybody, so much for tuning into this episode of Takeaways. You can check out all 3 shows that we have throughout the week on VegasNation.com. And also, again, thanks to our sponsors, Station Casinos and Blue Wire Podcasts. Again, check out Myles at Myles A. Simmons and on Pro Football Talk at BFT Live and the Peter King Podcast. He's a busy man. So again, for Myles, thank you so much. And I'm Heidi Fang. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in.